Well, a very warm welcome to everybody. Sorry, I just got to plug my ears in. It's great to see everyone today, and what an awesome autumn weekend we've had up this way, isn't it? It's fantastic. All right. Please stand while we start the next song, and I'll plug myself in.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Hard to get good help.
And you're back.
Around here somewhere. There it is. That's why I couldn't find it. All right, we'll edit that out later. Nothing can separate, even if I ran away. Your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have your message for me every day. 'Cause your love never fails. Stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fades. Wind is strong and the water's deep, but I'm not alone here in these open seas, because your love never fails. The chasm was far too wide. I never thought I'd reach the other side, but your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fades. You make all things work together for my good. As you make all things work together for my good. As you make all things work together for my good. As you make all things work together for my good. As you make all things work together for my good. As you make all things work together for my good. Make all things work together for my good. As you make all things work together for my good. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, that you love me. Your love never fails, because your love never fails. No, your love never fails.
Great stuff. Just grab a seat. If this is your first time here, big welcome. All those online, we just love the fact that you watch and you're involved and you're part of Redgum, and we really appreciate you. I also, it was funny, last week I thanked people for their giving, and then during the week I just thought, I want to do it again. It's like, I want you to understand the heart of this church is generosity, but the way people give is just amazing. I just get so encouraged and so inspired, and what God puts on people's heart to do, and it's not under compulsion, there's no pushing, it's a heart of generosity, it's God's heart, and I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that's involved in that. Now, the thing about church life, village life, is that there's a rhythm. There's all sorts of things happening. There's birthdays, and Sam turned 20 this week, and Annalise had a birthday, and Nick, you snuck one in there somewhere. But you've had a really, I don't know, like a very, very big week, you know. You lost your mum this week, and that's a really big deal. And we love you. We in some way, we feel your loss, but I know it's very personal for you, you know. But we love you, okay? Yeah. And so in all the rhythm of life, people go on little adventures, and you two are just back from Thailand, and, you know, like, and Charlie, you sort of jumped on a plane, went up to Central Australia, up to Memory Mountain, hey? So do you want to come out and we'll have a little chat? Come out here, Charlie. I've even got a microphone for you. Bring your bottle with you. Yeah. Do you know what these things are, Charlie? I'm gonna sit here. We're just gonna have a chat. Sam, happy birthday, 20th, fantastic, well done. You got invited to go to a very special place about 230 k's west of Alice Springs, and you thought you're going up there to play in this big gig. We've got a video of Memory Mountain. If we can just put that up, and we'll show you what this is.
The sign as well, because I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I just kind of filmed it, and then I tried to take a photo from that, so it's not clear, but clear enough to read.
How you going? How you travelling?
It's a bit different to last time I was here.
That's good, yeah. We're here now. We're just
7 years ago. Oh. Yeah, went up there with Ken.
Many years ago, some old fellas out there, they had this vision of having this cross put up on top of the mountain. And they call it the Forgiveness Cross. And it took many, many years for them to get done, to get all sorts of permissions and things done and how it was going to be. It's actually about 20 metres tall, and the foundations go pretty deep, and you can actually walk up there. And it's sort of, when we went out there, and then on the Friday night, they had the big sort of opening, or the turning on, because it lights up at night. And
it never used to, but this was
No.
the official
Yeah, the
launch
official.
of the lights at night. And just to give a little bit more background, Ken Duncan, he got very involved in this and raised over $2 million to get
Yep.
this thing built, right?
Yep.
And it copped a fair bit of a flogging in some areas of Australian culture too, didn't it? The idea of Indigenous people raising up a Christian cross.
Yeah, there was lots of different sort of conversations, I guess. And
Not politer than me, Charlie.
yeah, and but you know, it got through with all the help of, because when Ken was first asked to be a part of it, he didn't want to, because he sort of thought people might think that it's like his thing, you know, but he went out there and checked it out, and he thought, oh no, I'll be a part of it, and just help to raise money and funding for it. And on Friday was the official sort of turning on of the light, and the excuse me, the Chief Minister came out and had a yarn, and Ray Martin was the MC, and he was really good. And of course they had to have like translators and stuff. But I just thought I was going to have to play guitar, eh? But
and you didn't end up playing guitar because the bloke that you were meant to replace turned up.
Well, he did, yeah. So because I had a phone call like about a week before the happened, and a friend of mine, Andy, rang up and said, Charlie, I've got this crazy idea. How about coming up and would you like to, tell me about it? And I said, yeah, but how will I get there? He goes, oh, no, we'll get you there. And so I thought, oh, yeah, no worries. So got up there, and then, a few days beforehand, he said, oh, the fellow who was meant to be, who wasn't playing, he said he's turned up, which is what black fellows do, they just turn up, And I said, that's all right, I'll just go up and just soak it in and walk around, say good day to mob and hang out. And so, but I ended up playing bass with some of the lads and local fellows, and Steve Grace, of course. Yeah, played guitar with, we sort of go back a long way, me and Steve, and so it was good to catch up with him again, and got up and did a bunch of tunes, which was fun.
And something special happened to you. Now, you've had a hero in your little musical head, in your world for a long time, and we've got a photo of you meeting this person.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about him.
So this fellow here, I was actually sort of in this building, and because I knew when I back in the 80s when I was a teenager, I heard this band that came out of the Western Desert called the Warumpi Band, and I just thought they were just the coolest dudes, and they came from Papunya, which is just sort of a bit north of Akunji where we were, and someone said, oh, Sammy Butcher's coming. I went, Sammy Butcher? And I, oh my gosh. And he's just been one of my heroes, ever since I started playing guitar, as a teenager anyway in the 80s. And we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden he walks in the room and people go, Sammy's here, Sammy's here. I looked up and I saw him, and I just went weak at the knees, eh? I thought, and I just started tearing up, and I'm just like I wouldn't do that if Eric Clapton walked in the room, and Sammy Butcher, oh my God, gosh, and so I'm just standing there looking, and I said, come over and meet him. I went, oh no, come over. I said, no, come on. And so I went over and introduced myself, and got my photo taken and that, and you can probably tell I'm actually almost crying there. I'm trying to hold sort of back, but one thing he said, he was being interviewed by Ray Martin, and I was out there walking around community, and I came back and they were out there setting up, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be in on this. So
you kept sneaking closer and closer, didn't you?
Sort of.
Yes.
Because he's very quietly spoken, and Ray Martin, being the journalist, he's like, so Sammy, tell me about, and Sammy would just sit there for a while and just ponder, and then he'd just sort of say something. And so I'm looking at the guys doing the recording and the camera, and I thought, no one's told me off yet, so I got right up, and Ray said, so Sammy, you played in this famous band, you played all over the world, all through Europe, you played with this and that person and these dudes and stuff. He goes, and so, how do you handle being famous, and then coming back into community and that? And he said, well, Ray, he says, we don't use the word famous, we use the word responsible. And when he said that, all of a sudden I went, oh. And, when we find ourselves in places of, God has been able to bring us into places, whether they be places of influence or that, we're not there for our own, it's not our own bizzo, we don't, I've always said that we don't learn stuff to hang on to it and build our own little whatevers. We actually learn it so we can pass it on, and we hand it around. And when he said that, he said, we use the word responsible because in that community type setting, you then become put into a position where you need to bring other people along with you and always be raising up and speaking into the lives of people and those coming along later. Yeah.
It's a great word, because as God's kids, we've received so much from him. But there's a responsibility, isn't there, Charlie, right? And you're one of his sons. And it's been, I actually believe it's been healing for you, Charlie, this trip.
Absolutely. As I was saying to Dave before, how I was like, even though there was sort of had this plan, well, go there and do this and be part of that. Actually, Sammy was saying, he says, when he was driving towards, coming into, towards Memory Mountain on the night, he said he was driving along the road and the cross lit up as he was driving along, and he looked up and he saw it and he said, I just pulled over and started crying, and because when the gospel came into that area, it didn't come through white people. It came through their own. It came through these four older Aboriginal gentlemen. They brought the word, And so you might know a bit of the history, like the Lutherans came up through, when they landed in Adelaide, and they went up through South Australia, up into the Territory, and then, the western districts of Victoria, you see a lot of the Lutherans influence there as well. But they translated the Bible into Aranda language up there, so which was really quite forward thinking in a lot of ways. So it meant that mob could read about God in their own language, and of course some of the terminology and the words and the symbolism from the Near East is foreign, so some of the words have to be changed. Because you might, I don't know if anyone knows, but like one of the totems up there is a Tasmanian tiger, because they were very prevalent in Australia. People think, they're just Tasmanian, but there's paintings that of Tasmanian tigers up all through the desert, the Western Desert, all over Australia actually. That's another story, but
You're getting sidetracked now,
I'll get
Charlie.
it's very easy, very easy.
Let's come back to those four, what they called evangelists, those Indigenous people. There's four memorials to them at the base of Memory Mountain, isn't it? And that's a testament to these people that brought the good news of the gospel to Indigenous people in that desert country. Yep.
Yeah, it's very when you as a Christian person and as an Aboriginal person, there's two worlds you've got to dance between, eh? Sorry, I've got to get back to you. Oh, good day. And there's two worlds, and you sort of have to navigate that every day, and so God's word is absolutely supernatural. And so when you experience the supernatural, that's so much more impacting and than if you just sort of read, or you can sort of read something and go, that's a nice sort of story or a principle and that. But when you experience God on a very supernatural level, when you read about that all through the Bible, especially, it is quite amazing. But I was saying to Dave, I think for me, going out there, even though all that stuff was there, I think it was sort of God giving me the opportunity to sort of come out into the desert and just be alone with him, away from all the distractions, just so we could sit down and have a yarn, eh? And so me and God had a good yarn and told me some stuff which was just really impacting to me, yeah, on a personal level, like I say.
Fantastic. Thanks, Charlie. Good on you. I love, Charlie, you talked about navigating between different worlds, and I know you work there at the courthouse for, Koori young people and all that sort of stuff, and you're adopted into a white family, and I know you have great respect for your mum. Mother's Day, we're going to chat about that. We've got some other things happening, but just thank you, Charlie, for being you and sharing your heart and your little experience up there, because listening to that, you feel like you've travelled somehow with you into that western desert country of Central Australia. Yeah, good on you. Back to you.
Thanks, Lex. Let's continue our time of focus, reflection, and worshipping of Christ through song.
Hope is here. Shout the news to everyone. It's a new day, peace has come. Jesus saves, mercy triumphs at the cross. Love has come to rescue us. Jesus saves. Hope is here. What a joyful noise we'll make as we join with heaven's soul to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Raise a shout to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Free at last, every debt has been repaid. Broken hearts can be remade. Jesus saves. Sing above the storms of life, singing through the darkest night. Jesus saves. Free at last, what a joyful noise we'll make as we join with heaven's soul to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Raise a shout to let all the world know that Jesus saves. You save, you heal, restore, reveal the Father's heart to us. You rose to raise us from the grave. Your Spirit lives in us. Sing it out to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Raise a shout to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Sing it out to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Raise a shout to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Sing it out to let all the world know that Jesus saves. Raise a shout to let all the world know that Jesus saves.
Tight ending, Dave. Everyone appreciated it too, I see.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, and you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, and your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. You're my name. I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day.
Love that song. Yeah, grab a seat, thank you. Coral, do you want to come and have a little chat to us about Mother's stuff? And yes, Coral, Mandy is washing the cover for the couch after she spilled her coffee that Zeke, you know that beautiful coffee you got your mum this morning? She just tipped it on the couch. Didn't appreciate it. Yep.
I'm just going to get...
But it was fun watching Mandy this morning having the two boys bringing her little gifts and cards and what they'd written on them. Yeah, I know stuff happens all over the place in families, but it's actually fun to watch. I'm waiting for you, Coral.
I'm just getting a couple of little helpers to help me in a minute. Welcome everyone, and it's so good to see all of you, especially the mums and all the ladies. If you're female, then we're celebrating you today. So it's just good to have you all here. And for those online that couldn't make it today, happy Mother's Day to you too. I've got two little helpers that are going to give all the ladies a little gift. And a big thank you to some people that made some absolutely wonderful morning tea. So after the service, when we have morning tea, what are you up to? After the service, we're going to have morning tea, and the ladies are going to serve themselves a drink first and then go and sit down, and some men are going to come round with food and offer you food. So kids, hang back and let all the ladies go first to get themselves something, and because it's their day today, so that, yeah.
Okay, so while kids keep shoving those out, Mandy, do you want to take your mob out of here? So if you want to go, if you're under like primary age, okay. Primary age, follow Mandy out there. And while that's happening, where's Tony? Tony, come down here. Is all the ladies got something? Just put your hand up if you've been missed. In the middle there, good, yep. And back over here. And at the back, oh, it's hard when you pay kids, hey? So Tony and Veronica have been heading up our way of praying for people in needs in the life of the church. And Tony and Veronica are heading away for about 3 months.
Could be.
Yeah,
Could be.
But still going to be doing that role. So Tony, just want to share a couple of thoughts about that.
Good morning. I don't know whether you've got my telephone number. Can my telephone number be on the screen, please?
Probably not. They won't have it set up, Tony.
Okay.
Yes. Unless they can. I don't know what they do out there.
I asked for it to be set up. Okay. This is about a story that comes out of the Bible, 2 Kings chapter 5. It's about Naaman the general. And he was a great man, and he but he had a problem. He had leprosy, uncurable disease. And he had a wife, and his wife had a servant that was just captured from Israel. And she spoke up and said to the wife, I know a man in Israel who could help you. We have a team in Redgum that can help you with your leprosy. An uncurable moment, but through Christ Jesus, it can be cured. We are there to help you in prayer. We will be there with you. There are 9 of us. We're not a people that want to, it's not a gossip time. We hold you close to our hearts, and we just keep the information close to us, unless you want it to go any further. But so there's my telephone number. So if you need prayer and the situation is a situation that is beyond yourself, give us a call. And thank you.
Well done, Tony. That's fantastic. It's a beautiful thing to know that if there's a crisis going on in your life, or just you want some support in some way, you can ring that number and Tony will share that with his team, and people praying for you or for someone else. Like often I'll get some contact from someone, text message saying this person's in strife, can you pray for them? And it's great to be able to pass that on to our prayer team. I don't know if you actually watched the coronation, but if you did, I think from an Aussie perspective, it's a bit of a shock when you see how far back history goes in England. The traditions they have that goes for hundreds of years. Like, what do we have in Australia? Mother's Day. Mother's Day. The very first Mother's Day was in America, and it was a lady called Anna Jarvis, and she was a Christian, and what she thought, she wanted to honour her own mum, and so she picked the 2nd of May because that was as close to the anniversary of her mum's death. And she had this idea of honouring mums, and they got these little white carnations, 500 of them, and they had this church service in a Methodist church in America, and they gave out 500 white carnations to the mums that day. 6 years later, the president in America declared a public holiday, Mother's Day. Now, in Australia, our first experience with Mother's Day was in 1910. A little Methodist church here in Australia, and this lady had the same idea of honouring mothers. And then the Methodists and the Salvation Army started to work together and promoting Mother's Day as a church service throughout our nation. In 1924, a Christian lady in Sydney thought, there's a lot of elderly mums in hospitals, and this is after World War I. They lost their husband, they lost a son. Wouldn't it be good if we could give them a gift, like a little hairpin or a bit of soap? And so she put an ad in the newspaper in Sydney, and they got given 850 gifts, which they delivered personally to mums in hospitals across Sydney. What I think gets me about that, and what I find fascinating, it was Christian women that initiated Mother's Day because they saw a need. They saw a problem. They saw something that wasn't right in our Western way of relating between male and female, and they wanted to honour mums. Now, I've got a little ad from a few years back. We just put that up on the screen, thanks? that's the culture that existed in Australia, right? Mother's Day gift, a mop bucket. It will last her life. It will make her life better if you give her a mop bucket, right? Like, I think my dad must have either wrote that ad or saw it, because growing up, Dad would always cherish Mum with gifts like a toaster, a washing machine, right? But there must have been something wrong in our Western way of valuing women to need to establish a Mother's Day, to show something special towards mothers. I want to read you something, and it's out of a book of the Bible you probably don't read a lot of. It's the book of Leviticus, and it's in chapter 19. At the start of it says, "The Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the entire community of Israel." This is, I want you to tell everyone, the whole nation, I want you to tell them this. You must be holy because the Lord, your God, is holy. And the word holy that Moses was using, it literally means morally clean. It's a reflection of God's heart. And God's saying, I'm your God, and this is the way I do life. I want you to do life this way too. Why? Why? Well, that's when life works best. When kingdom culture is expressed in our life, that's when life works best. I don't know if you've seen a newborn baby recently. Heather, you happen to have one there, don't you? Yeah. And the thing about newborn babies, I think what's so attractive about them is they're holy. There's no ick in them. They're just, and holy is really attractive. And it really helps relationships in life when you work with people and you do life with people that are morally clean, that reflect the kingdom, God's culture in their life. That's a fantastic thing. But in Leviticus, Moses is speaking to this massive big mob of people who've been slaves for 400 years. In their culture, they've been abused, traumatised, valued as low as animals, their life worth nothing. And God says to this people, be holy. They don't have a clue what holy is. It's not been there. They haven't known that. And so what God has to do through Moses is explain to them what holy looks like. And it's a long list. It's a really long list, and it goes on and on and on, and it includes things like do not steal. Who would have to teach someone that, tell them that? Do not lie. Do not deceive one another. Do not pervert justice. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Do not degrade your daughter by making her become a prostitute. Like, really, God? You've got to tell your people not to do that? He's trying to show them what holy looks like. Do not turn to idols. Do not practice divination, the occult stuff. And it just goes on and on and on. And he talks about how to sacrifice and how when you harvest a crop to leave something for the poor people to come along and pick up the little bits left over. It just goes on and on. But at the start of this list, at the very centre of where God begins in this list, he says this, each of you, so he's talking to the nation, but he's making it very individual. Each of you are to show great respect to your mother and father. But he puts mother first. Above all the things that would reflect the heart of God, he says, I want you to show great respect to your mum. in a culture where male-dominated whatever, God starts off with the mother. I find that amazing. That's just... And then he says, and you must always observe the Sabbath days of rest, because I, the Lord, are your God. But it begins with mothers. Now, I read that to you, or spoke that to you, from the Living translation of the Bible, the New Living. And it says that we are to show great respect. Great respect is probably not a great translation of that Hebrew ancient word. The King James says fear. You've got to fear your mum, right? That's not helpful either. And I think the reason we don't have a very good English word to translate the Hebrew word is because we don't do this stuff well. The Strong's Concordance uses two other words instead. It uses the word reverence and honour. Now, reverence, it's one of the old school words that, like, we don't use that. We don't really know what that means. But growing up, my dad was a Methodist minister, and his title was the Reverend David Raymond. And that began in the 1500s, in the 15th century, as a way of showing honour to clergy. By the 17th century, that was stuck in concrete. It was the Reverend, and it was a way of showing reverence to a person who led a church because of their position. I don't think that we actually do honour very well in this country. And honour and respect are different things. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit as we go along. But respect, if you respect someone, almost the respect you give them has to be earned. But honour is different, because honour can actually be given. And God has calls us to honour, and it doesn't require being earned. And when God took this big list, he then thought, oh, that's a long list. No one will ever remember that. I'm going to make it just 10. And he gave us the big 10. And the first 4 of the big 10 is about how to relate to God. And the next bit is how to relate to each other. And the 5th commandment is honour your father and your mother as the Lord has commanded you. And then here's the incentive, here's the payoff for this one, right? So that you may live long and that things will go well with you. Now, this is under Old Covenant. This is under law. God says, honour your father and mother, and things are going to go well with you, and you're going to have a long life. Under the New Covenant, Paul upgrades this. He upsizes it. And he begins in Ephesians 6 with speaking to children. He begins with children. Do you know what, Zeke? Children once were considered nothing. And you would never have a letter written to children. You relate to adults. But Paul, really radical what he did in the culture that he was living in. He begins Ephesians 6 speaking to children, and he says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And then he goes on, honour your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. When you see one of God's promises repeated over and over again through the Bible, grab a little highlighter and scribble all over it. Like, print it out and get little neon lights flashing around it and stick it up on your fridge or do something. Like, grab it and run with it, because it's really big deal to God and it can be a really big deal to us. But here's the problem about obeying and honouring. Not all parents are good. We have had a lifetime working with youth, and I remember one time that the Orbost police rang me because they had two 14-year-old girls that had run away from home. And they didn't want the cops to contact their mum, so the police contacted me because these kids were part of our youth program. And so I can remember ringing the mum, and she lived just over here in East Bairnsdale there. And I said, your daughter and a friend have decided to run away to Sydney. And the police have picked them up as they're hitchhiking between Bairnsdale and Orbost, and they're now at the police station in Orbost. Do you want me to take you up there to pick your daughter up? And she says, no, just leave her there. She said, the best thing that could happen for her would be to be bashed and to be abused. She didn't use that word. She said, that's what happened to me at that age. It might just wake her up. I don't want her. So I said, well, what do you want me to do? And she said, I don't care. I said, well, can we go pick them up? So Coral and I went and picked up these two girls, and I asked the mum, and so we took them back to our house for the night. And by the next morning, mum had settled down a little bit, so we took the two girls back to mum. And I can remember I stood there in the kitchen and I washed the dishes just to help mum feel that I was serving, and I don't ever wash dishes. But I can still remember that all these years later. I washed dishes. Can you remember when you last? I can remember, right? It was a stretch for me, but I felt really good about myself that day. We got these kids back into their home, and even though mum didn't want the daughter, we got them back together again. And the next day was a Monday, and the school principal rang me, and he says, you need to come and see me. He says, I've had a complaint from a mother that you are dividing families. And I'm thinking, really? Not every mother is a great mother. Not every dad is a great dad. And that can be a problem when we think, how do we obey? How do we honour? What I love about what Paul said, he said, children, obey your mum and dad in the Lord. He didn't just say, obey your mum and dad full stop. Because it's possible for a parent to ask the kids to do something that they shouldn't do, that's not right. But he says, obey them if it's in God. If what they're asking you to do is in God, if it's right, that's when I want you to obey them. So that's a get out of jail free. For if you don't want to obey your mum, you don't want to obey your dad, just say it's not in God. They might argue over that one with you. Yeah. But when it comes to obeying parents, there's a get out of it if it's not in God. But when it comes to honouring, Paul doesn't give us a get out of jail free card. It's just honour, and then here are the good consequences. Here are the things that will work well. And it's not a suggestion, it's a command. It reflects kingdom culture in your life. It's the way of being holy just as God is holy. And as a child, you can obey your parents without honouring them. But you can't honour your parents without obeying them if you're a child. And the Greek word that Paul uses for for obey, it's fascinating because just a few verses earlier, he uses almost the same word. And he's talking to us in the life of church. And it's a word that he uses, and it's a Greek word. And you know how I was talking a few weeks ago about the Greek word hupo, of coming under? It's that word with something on the end of it, and it's hupotasso, something like that. Don't worry about it, but it's just this weird Greek word. And Paul is talking about that in how we relate to each other. How you relate to Daryl. And it's a voluntary coming under. It's translated, the word is translated into ugly word, English ugly word called submit. We're to submit to one another. But it literally means a voluntary attitude of giving in, of cooperating, of assuming responsibility and carrying a burden the other person might have. When we translate Greek, the ancient Greek, into English, there are some problems because some words are not quite fully understood. But in about 1880, they found this big stack of literature written in the first century when Paul wrote so much of the New Testament, and it's all Greek, ancient Greek, but it's in normal day life. And since 1880, they've been grabbing all this stuff out of there and discovering what some of these words really mean in the context and the time. And that word that we have, this hupotasso, that we translate submit, more correctly should be actually translated support. You know, when God created Eve for Adam as his helper, Paul says we are to support one another in the life of a church, and wives are to support husbands. And we've thrown this submit word in, and even that we have a bit mixed up in our understandings, our Western way of thinking. But Paul is talking about to adults how to relate to each other, and then he gets to children, and he nearly uses the same word, but it's hupo kuko. I'm glad I'm not a Greek person, right? But it's nearly the same word, but it's not. What it means is, for children, is to listen attentively to your mum or your dad and then do what's asked. And here's the kicker. Here's the thing that separates the two words, even though they're nearly the same. The child is not equal to the parent, whereas as adults we're equal to each other. But the child comes under authority of a parent and is not equal to, and doesn't have the same right as a parent. And so obeying is God's way of kids to do life, and God's way of trying to bring balance to that is to say when it's in God you obey. And then he even says to dads, not to mums, don't exasperate your kids. Don't get your kids so cranky and angry because of the way you're parenting them. He says instead, bring them up and train them and instruct them in God. You can't do both at the same time. If you're a dad and you're bringing out anger in your kids, you aren't raising them, training them up God's way. And Paul only speaks to the men, not to mums. I think Paul understood a mother's heart. Zeke, who's just sitting there now, 10 years of age, he created a very special Mother's Day card for his mum, Mandy. And I want to read you just one line from his Mother's Day card, which you gave me permission to, just one line, wasn't it? Just one, and couldn't bring the card, just one line. And this is what he wrote. Any time you make a mistake, you apologise straight away. That is a biblical way of showing honour. And I'll explain it this way. As Aussies, we began as a nation in a convict culture where you didn't want to show honour to anyone in authority over you. Only 103 years before I was born, 22 diggers and 6 soldiers were killed in the Eureka Stockade as a stance against the corruptness and the injustice of the licence system for gold mining, for the wrong ways the police were acting. And we just we just don't want to, in our Aussie way, we don't want to show honour to those in authority over us. But God calls us to honour fathers and to mothers. The thing is, we don't have a very good understanding of the word honour because we see it through a Western culture. And what I want to do, as I just finish up, I want to show you what honouring your mother, and we're just going to focus on mothers today, on what honouring your mother actually looks like. The Hebrew word is a word that means weight, heaviness. And it's a word picture of a set of scales. You know the old scales where you have like a thing on this side, a thing on this side? And to honour your mother is to look at all her strengths and put them on one side, and then look at all her weaknesses and put them on the other side, and not to sit in judgment over all her flaws, but to give grace and to forgive and to set her free from that. See, obeying is for children, and children means under your roof. That's the biblical concept, under your roof. But honouring, it's for life. And you can honour a mum or a dad even if they have died. Because honouring is for your benefit. Sure, who's a mum in here that would love it with your kids obeyed always, every time, without arguing, every time? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Hey, fantastic. That's not the real world. But in the real world, God says, honour your mother and it will go well with you. Do you know why it'll go well with you? People who have been damaged in families of origin by the way their mother or father treated them in harsh, wrong ways can limp through life. It's like you're living life, but you're broken. Your family of origin has held you back, and you're trying to do life the best you can, but you're carrying something with you. And so I've seen people that hate their father because they're an alcoholic, and then they become an alcoholic. How does that work? Because they never understood how to honour. And you may have a mother like I had, amazing mother. And if you think your mother is like a saint and could never do anything wrong, you'll be blind to her weaknesses and you'll end up doing the same thing, because if you excuse them in your parent, you'll do them yourself. So honouring is coming to God and saying, like, even if you get a piece of paper today and say, I'm going to honour my mum, and you write down all her strengths and you write down all her weaknesses, and those weaknesses may have caused you great grief and harm and pain and trauma, and you take them to God and you forgive and you give grace and you honour her for where she was. And if the only thing you can get to is to say, the only thing that I can honour a parent for is they gave me life, that's something. That's something. If we could discover the gift of honouring, how it benefits us, it sets us free, and how it sets those above us free, we would actually step into what God promises, that it would go well with you and that you'd have a long life. Because it's not like God just twinkles it over you. Oh, honour your parents? Okay, no worries. Here, have it go well with you. It actually, it goes well because we're whole, we're free. We're not held back anymore. Even if your mother was amazing like your mother was, Philip. She's probably the only mother in the world that I can think of the word fear would sit well with me. I had great respect for your mum, but there's a tiny little bit of she was ferocious if you got on the wrong side of it, right? but an amazing, powerful woman. A woman you should be very proud of as your mother. Yeah. Let's pray. God, we all have a different story. Some of us have had mothers, are mothers that are brilliant. God, following, Jesus loving, praying for, leading by example. Oh, how good is that? What a legacy for a generation. Some of us, that's not our story. And so this day, God, help us, enable us to come and give honour biblically, where we take that set of scales, not in judgment, not in condemnation, but in a transparent, real life look at this is mum, this is dad, and I'm going to honour them. This is where they're strong, this is where they're weak. Help me, God, to give grace to their weaknesses, to forgive, and to move through life where things go well with us and live a long life on the earth. Thank you, Jesus.
Stand and sing, shall we?
Nothing can separate, even if I ran away. Your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have new messages for me every day. Your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. The water's deep, but I'm not alone here in these open seas, because your love never fails. The chasm was far too wide, I never thought I'd reach the other side. Your love never fails. Stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. All things work together for my good. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, because I know that you love me. Your love never fails, because your love never fails. Your love never fails.
Thank you. So stay, hang around. Special morning tea there this morning. Say good day to someone. And we'll see you next week.